It might need to be updated for modern sentiments, but
Because
back in the
this is
80s,
a long conversation. You had a conversation a long time ago about this.
a bit ago, yeah, with my brother,
Was it?
who's a science fiction writer. So he breaks down, he's always looking for patterns in media and books
Oh.
and stories and fiction and all that stuff. And we had a conversation. It's probably been, I don't know, like 15 or 20 years. So this is back when horror films in America were primarily like the 80s and 90s,
Hmm.
were the primary, sort of the models for this. And I think it probably needs to be updated. I need to study the pattern now. But we're talking about the difference. This is when like Japanese horror films were getting really popular.
Pause that for a second. By the way, welcome everyone to Personality Quest this week from Personality Hacker. This is part of our Personality Hacker Plus membership. Joel, Mark, Witt, Antonia, Dodge, Jonathan Hart, and producing today is Karina Gunyan. Continue your Japanese horror movie story. I
Okay.
just want to let people know where the heck they are and who we are.
No problem. Okay, so
Welcome.
This was actually 20 years ago because this is when we had that whole slew of Japanese horror films that were being remade into American horror films. So like The Ring and The Grudge and all that stuff. So this is probably about 20 years ago. Anyway, we were talking about how the pattern of American horror films is it's always a morality tale, or at least at the time it was. It was like kind of in the 80s and 90s, who got killed first in horror movies, right? In like the old Friday the 13th, and it was always the loose the loose cheerleader. She was always the person who got killed first, or like the proud football player. He got killed next. And the person who was always left to the end was sort of like the virginal, sweet, naive girl
Yeah.
who got to get to the end of the movie and survive. But in Japanese horror movies, did the monster notice you? Does it know you exist? And that's basically the criteria. And if so, then your job is to redirect the monster's attention to somebody else. And I thought, I don't know, I'm gonna make some patterns here about Japanese culture, but I'm like, in a country that separated their walls with rice paper, I bet there is like a communication about being
Noticed.
yeah, well being considerate enough to not make too much noise, to not be too sort of like auditorily aggressive or not being in anybody else's business. I mean, I don't know that, but I was wondering if it's like that's why that's the morality tale of the Japanese horror film.
Well, I'm reading this book called Writing Monsters and like why monsters scare us. And the idea that making noise, making ripples, being a human and disturbing the balance, that is absolutely terrifying because you're always having to be vigilant about that. You don't want to be the best, you don't want to be the worst, you want to be right in the middle. That's
Can I just
absolutely
say,
terrifying.
there's a couple members who aren't able to access the Zoom for the private membership call. I'm sending an email right now to everybody that's in the membership group, just to let everybody know there's a few people that weren't able to get the link today. So hang tight. I'm getting that out while Jonathan and
Awesome.
Antonia entertain you with their delightful conversation about Japanese horror movies.
Well, you know what is really scary? You said The Grudge and The Ring was 20 years ago.
I know, right?
That's a horror movie in itself.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I wasn't. I'm still in my 30s, right?
I didn't realize that.
20 years ago.
Yeah.
Do they even have modern? I feel like media has been just disabled from COVID and the lockdowns. Like, do we have horror movies that come out now often? I don't know.
You know what's good media right now? Me reading off my Kroger coupons to you.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
So let me frame this though. Today, we're going to focus in on ISFJ's self-love, right? And I'm going to be getting this link together, so I'll say this really quickly. I had a friend who I took an improv class with. Well, he became a friend in my improv class. And I came to find out, because we do profiling here at Personality Hacker, I came to find out this guy's an ISFJ in improv with me. And I would have been like, every time I get a new reference experience with somebody of all different personality types, I always update my learning and my thinking. And I'm like, wow, he really would, he was probably one of the best like improv people in the entire class. And I realized that improv gave him a framework for some of the parts of himself that were more improvisational. Because whenever I think of an ISFJ, I don't think of like improvisation is not the first thing that I think of when I think of the personality type ISFJ. And yet my friend, he was amazing at improv. Not only that, but he went on to begin to teach and help guide other people into improv through a lot of the frameworks he was learning. And it really opened my eyes to say, not all personality types are the same. So as today we tune into self-love, learning how to love yourself as an ISFJ. Because what we're going to talk about today. How you love yourself as an ISFJ is the next podcast coming out later today. We're going to take a snippet from our podcast here on the Personality Quest call. And we're going to look at that and we're going to discuss it. And we're going to go deeper into how we can apply some of the principles to our own lives too, in case we're not ISFJ. So if you're ISFJ, you're going to really want to tune in. but also the rest of us think you're gonna get something to learn from this. So I think what you're about to do, Kroger coupons. I don't know if does that tie into today's theme, or is it just general?
No, you just said don't go
you know
on
why
too
I thought this? My grandmother was an ISFJ, and she used to cut
Ah.
out coupons all the time. And she used to have like a coupon book. You know the old
Yeah.
like older people when we were
Oh,
kids.
yeah.
Do people do this anymore? She'd have this like little container she would carry with her, and she'd have a coupon for every possible thing that she would need at the grocery store. It was all organized and framed out. So I'd like to hear these Kroger coupons today.
I
And
mean-
remind me of my ISFJ grandmother, and remind me of
Well,
I used to
I
experience
never
it a lot.
I never put stocking coupons before. Maybe that's part you can use that. I mean, thinking about ENFJ, I don't have introverted sensing, possibly, but there is this lady, a really wonderful lady at my Kroger, and she got into the habit of celebrating with me every time I saved money on using my Kroger card. Like, she makes such a big deal about it. Like, oh, you saved this much today. And I mean, maybe I just enjoyed the feedback, but I started like saving more money, and she would get more excited,
just to see.
excited. Like her energy would amp up. And I was like, I don't know if she's an ISFJ, but just she was so proud of conserving things or celebrating my conservation. And so it's a silly thing, but I have these Kroger coupons. I think of her every time. I'm like, I'm really looking forward to like just saving like $55 and her to get excited with me. And I purposely go in her line to do that.
Yeah. That's very extroverted feeling of you.
Yeah. Yeah. Very much so.
You're like, I'm saving money so that she'll be really happy.
Yes, I know.
Right. And we can celebrate together. Yeah, fabulous.
Exactly.
Yeah. And the reason why he was mentioning the coupons, Joel, is because you said don't talk too long. And he's like, oh, so you don't want me to.
Well, now I need you to talk long.
Yeah.
So I have to get a
all right.
out to all of our members. We shifted a little bit of our membership. And so there's a new link and something broke out of the operation. So feel free to buy Joel time as I
This
get
is
operation.
super intuitive. So like, I can save 50 cents on a purchase of Kroger brand cheese slice, any variety. Cheese slices are going hot right now. Is that true for you? I mean, can we make any patterns?
Can we go back to talking about Japanese horror films?
Sure. It's top 7 things that make monsters terrifying. Number 1, they're unpredictable.
Yeah.
You cannot guess their pattern.
Wow, that was fast.
Yeah. Number 2.
You pivoted.
Are you using ChatGPT for
Nope.
this? You're doing this
No, I read a book. I read a book.
Man.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. So
Fair
number
enough.
2, they are the capacity for violence.
Mhm.
Yeah. I think of, like, you mentioned Friday the 13th. I haven't seen it, but I think that's a good example. It's just disturbing capacities for violence. Number 3, they cannot be negotiated with.
Ooh. Yeah.
I think zombies.
Mm-hmm.
That's terrifying. Like, there's no charm. There's no like, let's talk about this.
Yep. Right. Sharks.
Yeah. Sharks. Well, that's another number 4. We are the prey.
Mm-hmm.
We're at the bottom of the food chain. Yeah. I remember, I think I was 9 years old, saw Jurassic Park. No, it just absolutely terrified me because I'm like, in this world, I'm the bottom of the food chain.
Yeah. Which is really disconcerting because I used to think we're at the top of the food chain, but I was like, no, actually, we crawled our way out of it. We don't even have to worry about the food chain. That doesn't even affect us. So if we're thrown back into it, it's like, yeah.
Yeah.
I have no resources for this.
Yeah. Scrap your rule book, scrap your skill set. It's now a complete different game. Number 5, alien, foreign. We're very disturbed by the foreign, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
For sure.
What you're telling me here. Can you just tell me verbally? Because I can't
Yeah,
read
Heather
that
said the
quickly.
link at the bottom of the member page works, but the one in the weekly quest tab doesn't.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. So
But
I'm
just
still going to
leave
send
an
this
FYI.
out as a safety just to get it out to everybody.
Okay.
So
Sounds good.
I'm seeing it all.
I'm actually riveted by the top list for the monsters. Okay, so we've got the first one was
back up. Unpredictability.
unpredictable. Number 2 was the capacity for violence. Number 3 was
Bottom of the food chain.
bottom of the food chain.
And then negotiability. Like no negotiability.
No, they cannot negotiate is number 4. Yeah.
And then number 5 would be foreign, alien.
Alien, right?
Not understanding the perspective. We're not understanding.
Yeah. Well,
I think
razors for fingers, or
do what?
they have razors for fingers, or like chomping jaws, or like
That's number
yeah.
6, terrifying appearance.
Mhm.
Oh.
Disturbing, like eyeballs where they shouldn't be.
Right, right. That's always not a good thing. It's like, why
No,
are the eyeballs there?
it throws your
Okay.
sensory perception off. And I think the last one, oh, I always have a hard time with lists. That last one always evades me so much. But I tried to creating little examples of monsters in there. So like Jaws was one, Jurassic Park, Dracula was my terrifying appearance. Also, terrifying appearance can be beauty. I think people underestimate how terrifying beauty can be.
Right, like
True.
a siren.
Yeah.
Right.
Tim Curry in Legend
Oh
is
yeah.
absolute monster. It's
Oh
just like
yeah.
getting inside your head and completely convincing you of a reality
That's
that
one of
does.
my favorite movies of all time. Very few people have seen it, but I love that movie.
I
It's
have.
beautiful.
Well, let me tell you the story of how I discovered that movie. We all got sick with the flu when I want to say I was like 7 years old. All my siblings were there. So I was at least 8. My sister was a baby. We all got sick with the, puke flu. My
Ugh.
mom was the only one able to go to church. And so my dad plopped us down on the couch and we turned on the TV, and the opening music from Legend
Mhm.
started playing. And I like instantly felt good all over my body, my mind. I was like, this movie is amazing. I was immersed in it, and I loved and hated Tim Curry.
Mhm.
I was just like, man, this is an amazing movie. And I will never forget that warm, cuddly moment of drinking chicken noodle soup and Sprite and
Mhm.
watching Legend.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's been one of my favorite movies since I was a kid. Ridley Scott directed it.
Yes.
It's Ridley Scott, so you know it's gonna be good. It's got Tom Cruise, Mia Sara, and Tim Curry. So Mia Sara is the girl from Ferris Bueller's Day Off,
Oh yeah.
the girlfriend. So she's
Mhm.
in it. Tom Cruise, very young Tom Cruise,
Super
and
young. Yeah.
super young. And it's like one of the reason why I loved it so much is it was one of the only well done fantasy movies at the time. Like now we take fantasy movies for granted. They're everywhere and all
After
over the
Lord of the
place.
Rings, right?
Yeah, after Lord of the Rings, they became, popular. But
Mhm.
before Lord of the Rings, it was like there was a couple of them there. And usually they were sort of fantasy adjacent, look, Hook or something to that effect, but no true actual center of the bell curve. You had like, I don't know, like Beastmaster, which was
Yeah.
okay, and just like okay ones here and
Mhm.
there. But Legend was, I mean, it was like they took a fantasy movie and they took it seriously and they turned it into something beautiful. And
Yes.
and it was like even like there you'd have some Jim Henson ones, like what was the one with David Bowie and all the Muppets?
Labyrinth.
Labyrinth. But it was
Mhm.
like there was always like the silly component to it.
Yeah.
But not Legend. Legend took itself very
What about
seriously.
Willow? Somebody in the chat
Willow was
membership.
good.
I think
Yeah.
Willow was solid. Yeah.
Yeah, Willow was solid. It was very but it was a little too like it wasn't artistic like Legend was. Legend was art.
Dark Crystal. That
Right,
was Jim
exactly.
Henson, right?
Yeah, that's Jim Henson. Yep. So anyway, I mean there were fantasy movies, but I feel like Legend was the first one that really like took it like what Ridley Scott did with Blade Runner, elevating
Mhm.
science fiction. Right? He
Mhm.
elevated science fiction with Blade Runner. I think he elevated fantasy with Legend, but nobody knows Legend. Everybody knows Blade Runner.
Well, and I think a piece that makes Legend so amazing, and I think that it makes every movie amazing, is the willingness not to tell the sequel.
Mhm.
Because like I don't remember his name, but the king, like the guy that Tim Curry played, he references another boss character,
Mhm.
like father, like the
Mhm.
darkness.
Yeah,
Like
Darkness.
darkness references someone
Right.
else.
Yeah.
And
Mm.
and the reason fantasy works for our minds is because it doesn't answer all the questions.
Yeah. I think it's Mother, as he say, Mother Night. Mother Night,
Mother Night, yeah,
fold,
that's right.
fold your dark arms about me.
Yes.
I've seen that movie only 4,000 times, but yeah, it's such a good one. Such a good
Mm,
one. Okay.
Thank you if you're just joining us and you're a member, you haven't been able to get in. Hopefully, you're getting in now. I just sent an email to the entire membership for Personality Hacker Plus members with the link for today's quest call, so you can come into the private Zoom membership and discuss with us after we end this live stream. We're going to have more discussions, some journal prompts. We'll talk about our quest today and all of that. Just to frame everybody again, we gather together once a week right now as part of the membership to do this quest in the morning on Sundays, 11:45 Eastern Time. We watch a clip from the upcoming Personality Hacker podcast, which is 10 or 15 minutes usually, typically on that range. And then we talk about it. We usually find a way to apply it to our lives and get some more learning, unpack some of the core principles, and then apply it as a community together, as a membership community. And then we go even deeper. Once the live stream ends, we go even deeper. We have some journal prompts, we have some reflection moments, some conversation in some breakout rooms, which is really great because you get to talk to like minds, because you probably don't live next to the people that you could geek out around with personality type and personal growth. So it's a fantastic opportunity for you to connect with new friends and people that get where you're coming from and understand, oh yeah, I'm into this thing too. Understanding how I'm wired, my mind, how I learn information, make decisions, and how I can apply that to my life and understand people around me. It influences career, relationships, and my personal identity. So that's what we're all about here on these live calls. I think it's about time to go. We're talking about ISFJ self-love. Yes.
I was just going to say, and then Quest is just a piece of the Personality Hacker Plus membership, which also includes a library of content that we're adding to. It also includes a book club that I'm starting. So
it's a premium podcast you're going to start up.
It's actually a premium podcast. That's right.
We're not going to release on the open channels, but you're going to go through. I think one of the ones you want to go through is like Carl Jung's psychological types at some point very soon. We just did a deep dive, by the way, which I just edited. I'm uploading into the membership area in the Academy. Last week, Antonia led us through a session going into Dr. John Beebe and Jungian concepts around the axis of relating. So if you're looking at from dominant or inferior, or in our car model, driver and 3-year-old or co-pilot 10-year-old, she talks about the axis relating to self and the axis relating to others from a personality type standpoint. It comes from our personality dynamics course. And so she brought some of that to the Quest or the Personality Hacker Plus deep dive on Thursday. And that's going to actually be available right now. So if you join today, the membership, personalityhacker.com/membership, you can join the Personality Hacker Plus membership. You can be part of this discussion right now, but plus you're also, by the end of the day, hopefully, maybe by the day tomorrow, our team puts it up there, you're going to be able to access that newest recording from our monthly deep dive call. And you're going to love this. We go really deep into some of these concepts. Probably maybe we've gone a little too deep in some of this stuff because I don't know where everybody's at. Some people are just starting out, but it's pretty in depth. And I think the content is really, really solid. So I'd love for you to access that as well as part of this membership. Okay. Are we ready to look at today's clip from the ISFJ Self-Love podcast? Okay, we're going to look at this clip. Let me set it up. We talked about how an ISFJ can show themselves love through the lens of their personality type. And then we pulled out some information or some knowledge from that of what the rest of us can learn. The other 15 types that are ISFJs, what else can we learn from that as well? So today we're going to tune to that. When we come back, we'll hear just broadly. We'll have an open conversation a little bit. And then we're going to go very deep into the actual membership call. So you're going to want to be part of this. And we're going to apply it to ourselves. We're going to find ways to actually apply this today. All right. So Karina, our producer, let's go ahead and show that clip now. We'll be back in about a few minutes.
Yeah, I think so. Let's talk about that driver of memory, introverted sensing for an ISFJ. Not only if you're an ISFJ, do you have capacity here, like skill capacity, you have a lot of certainty here too. When you're in this part of yourself, when you're coming from this part of your personality and showing up to the world this way, I think you have a lot of certainty. Like, yeah, I'm living from a good part of myself. My cognition is in line. I feel very equipped to approach the world from this part.
Yeah, absolutely. And because the function itself, introverted sensing or memory, is a function that post-processes experiences. And that's why we call it memory. It's because it's referencing something that has already happened. It's referencing something that a person already experienced and now can take their time with it, can really consider its meaning, consider what the right lessons are from it. And it's not just limited to personal experiences. It can also borrow wisdom from other people's experiences. So it gets tapped into this long timeline of one's own history and the history of the people around the user, the history of the culture that they're in. This is why it oftentimes is associated with traditions. It's effectively a function that's very attuned to how the past is the crucible in which we have been forged. And so as a function that has talent, it means that people who have it as a driver function usually do have pretty solid memories, usually. Not sometimes they claim they don't, but I think of that as like the person who's like, my house is a mess, and it's just because they didn't vacuum their way out of the house, right? It's like your house isn't a mess. It's just you have super high standards for it. And so I think usually people with ISFJ preferences have a pretty solid memory. They just think it's faulty for whatever reason. But that said, they usually do have a strong sense of continuity. They are very good at tracking changes over time. This is part of how they become very detail oriented, because they're noticing all the little details of things that have changed or are different than what they expect them to see. This is why they're usually very good at editing and doing things that require, like a focus on detail.
I mean, a great example of that is the series we're recording right now. You and I, Antonia, do not have this as a strength.
Right.
And I'm always worried, like, wait, did we talk about this the same way last week on the show that we're talking about this week? Are we changing it too much? Is it consistent from episode to episode?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm deeply uncertain about that. But
Yeah.
I would say someone with this as a strength, this is kind of what they're tuned into. They notice those differences and those changes and the consistencies.
Yeah. We only understand it in terms of the fact that we're terrible at it.
We're like,
and we're always like questioning, right?
Yeah.
And like, is there a sense of continuity in everything we're doing? I don't know. So what does it look like when an ISFJ has high expectations for themselves, meets those expectations, and then can feel the love that they're trying to send to themselves?
Yeah.
Well, it's a strong sense of personal continuity. It's a sense that their entire life it's almost like it's laid out chapter by chapter, and it's all been building on itself, so that they have a sense of purpose, a sense of narrative of where they've come from. I think there's an importance here to not devaluing personal experiences. One of the worst things an ISFJ can do is to act like their past doesn't matter, or the things that they've gone through don't really matter, when they undervalue them. And don't see them as a rich source of understanding, a rich source of wisdom. When they go, oh, I haven't really done much, right? And it's kind of a shrug. Remember, you're talking about your grandmother. You would ask her about what it was like when she was growing up, right?
Yeah.
And she would just kind of be like, oh, I don't know. Like it wasn't that important. It's actually extremely important. And for people who have this as a strength, when they devalue their own personal history, they're setting obstructions in front of themselves to receive self-love. Because a big part of how they know that they are, like, this is how they build confidence. You build self-confidence by overcoming obstacles and then taking an accounting of it. And it's the introverted sensing or memory function that is the best at that. It's the best at observing yourself having come through something hard and gone, I did that. But when you devalue your own history, when you devalue your own experiences, then you're robbing yourself of earned self-trust, earned self-confidence. All those things that you earned in going through all of these difficult times, it's almost like you're saying, well, that for some reason that didn't matter. And so talent is not enough. It's skill development. The skill has to be ruminating, thinking about those things, really taking an accounting of them, understanding what that meant to you, understanding how it impacted and affected other people. And realizing that even if your life hasn't been a life of a ton of adventure, none of us get through this experience without tribulation. None of us get through an experience of life without challenges. And you have overcome a significant amount of challenges just because you showed up, right? Just because you're a human. So it's really important for people with introverted sensing or memory as a driver function to not undervalue their own personal experiences.
Yeah, that's so important. And so with this capacity, then, are there other things they can have capacity for at the highest levels?
I think acceptance is a major piece of this. Getting very good at accepting themselves, accepting other people, accepting reality, accepting the challenges that they've had to go through. Just kind of making peace with the fact that this is like the reality that they've experienced. There's no way to avoid it because it's already happened, right? So it's like there's a beautiful acceptance that comes along, almost like a philosophical acceptance of life. And that includes, and I think this is the kicker, this is the big one, this is the skill that has to be built on top of the talent, accepting imperfection. Realizing that nobody's perfect. Nobody is. And not every ISFJ is afflicted with perfectionism, but most of them start out that way. Most of them deal with a challenge with this. And so it's setting the high expectation for introverted sensing or memory to accept the reality of imperfection.
Yeah.
And recognize if they look around and they're able to have borrowed wisdom, not just their own wisdom, but borrowed wisdom from other people's experiences, they'll realize that nobody's story includes perfection. Zero. There's zero stories that say, I did all of that because I was perfect. And so the skill is to truly, truly, truly accept zero people are perfect, including the self.
Yeah. So that's how an ISFJ can have proper expectations to show themselves love. And we talked about the highest capacity at the driver all the way down to the 3-year-old. Let's pivot now, because there's not just ISFJs listening or watching. All of the 15 rest of us types want to look to ISFJs and say, what can we learn about self-love from ISFJs? So as we tune to that, and we think in terms of an ISFJ who has the proper expectations for their personality, all 4 functions, is, stretching themselves in the 2 front seat functions. They're expecting a lot, and they're mitigating and they're managing the 2 backseat functions of the 10-year-old and 3-year-old. And they have found a way to have good relationship with themselves and send themselves love and receive that from themselves. They're operating life well. What is something that the rest of us can learn from that? What's the lesson here from the ISFJ?
Yeah. So there is a wisdom that comes from an ISFJ that has done this level of growth and development, integrated these parts of themselves, set proper expectations, built a good, solid relationship with them. And in that wisdom comes, or at least the thing that I personally admire, is a capacity for deep joy. It's a capacity to understand the beauty in the simple things of life, a capacity for acceptance. It's a recognition that life isn't always the way that we want it to be. And yet there is still beauty in simplicity. There's beauty in just sort of like in the ordinary. Like life is fleeting and we don't get a lot of time. And introverted sensing or memory, that driver function, it's watching clock, right? It's watching time pass. It's understanding sort of the changes that we all go through, and it's recognizing how much time has actually elapsed. And we don't get endless amounts of time. So can we really appreciate everything we are given?
Yeah.
Can we really appreciate the beauty in the ordinary, especially since things are so fleeting?
Well, and if you're tuned into the beauty of the ordinary, as an ISFJ, you have the capacity to see inside of yourself and others this nuanced quirkiness, this nuanced uniqueness, this nuanced humanness, if I can use the word human now, Antonia. I'm always worried. But this is a very unique experience. And I think that you're tuned into that. And so I think that also gives a capacity for joy. I don't see all those tiny, tiny nuances like an ISFJ might. My personality it's not wired for that. I see the bigger pictures that they're more abstract and they're not detailed, right? They're kind of just broad brush. So I miss a lot of that. When I'm talking to a person, a lot of people seem the same to me because, again, I just broad brush everybody. But I think an ISFJ really is tuned into the micro differences between folks. And I think that does give a capacity for more joyfulness, like the mosaic of humanity, the mosaic of all of us as people. I think they have that capacity. I think that's something that I can learn from them personally. And I think anybody can in that self-love journey.
Yeah, it's an awareness of a contentment in the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, that true appreciation brings it's like joy just effuses when you've got that that sort of philosophical awareness about life.
Yeah. Okay, we've done a lot of talking here, unpacking the idea of ISFJs showing themselves love, the expectations. Remember, love is a verb. It is an action that we do. It's not a stance we have. It's something we do. So if you are an ISFJ or you have an ISFJ in your life or any type and you are showing love, well, that means you're doing something. That means you're acting upon that. You're demonstrating to yourself that you love yourself. And I think we gave some access points here in this episode for how to do that. Again, if you want to go further, please come over and get one of the owner's manuals for your personality type. I think that's going to be really helpful for you to unpack some of this CAR model. And it really gives more specifics on how to do some of the things we recommended.
Yeah. And remember, it's not earned. Love is not earned.
Yeah.
A healthy relationship is, but you are always sending love to yourself. But are you receiving love from yourself? And a healthy relationship with yourself is how you'll receive the love you're already giving.
Yeah.
All right, welcome back to Personality Quest, part of the Personality Hacker Plus membership. We meet every Sunday live. If you're just joining us, Joel Mark Witt and Antonia Dodge here with Jonathan Harden. Producing today is Karina Gunyon. And thanks, Karina, for helping behind the scenes every week, by the way. I just wanted to say a shout out to you. I know you're not on front of camera, but we really appreciate you and all the attunement you do to make this all happen. So we just tuned into the ISFJ talking about how an ISFJ can show themselves love. A couple of things that came up was this idea of, looking at the past, what's forged us as humans. Another thing, a big theme that came up was acceptance. That was a huge theme that came up. Accepting imperfection and being okay with things not always being perfect. And I think there's a lot we can learn from ISFJs around this.
Yeah, particularly ones who have overcome perfectionism. I think that's an affliction that most ISFJs, maybe not 100%, but most ISFJs have reported dealing with, and disappointment when things don't hit a certain standard. And so I've noticed that the more seasoned an ISFJ is, the more philosophical they are, right? They're like, even if they don't understand something, then once they understand it, or like if they've made a judgment and a person can like sort of go, well, what about it from this angle? They'll go, yeah, you're right. That is an interesting angle, right? There's this sort of like this openness and this sort of philosophical feeling that things are the way they're supposed to be.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Actually, I had a wonderful encounter with an ISFJ in our personality hacker community at the PT 101 event. And we were talking, and I think I had an intuitive insight. So I was asking permission to share it. And at the moment, I was talking and I was kind of ramping up to share this insight. And she said, do you mind if we just make ourselves more comfortable and sit down in some chairs? And I remember thinking, like, that was a mind-blowing moment, because I was like, how often do I forget to just simply accept this moment, recognize that I need a comfortable chair to sit in. Things like that make such a difference and are such a leverage point to gaining insight. And once that preparation was done, it was like, oh yeah, this is great. This is going to be a wonderful experience.
Yeah. So Antonia, maybe we could also talk about this idea of a capacity for deep joy. I think that's just maybe, because in a minute here, I want to give everybody, our membership that's here on the Zoom call, we're going to go into small breakout rooms. And I want to ask you guys to discuss, everyone that's part of the membership, in 3 or 4 pods of groups, talk a little bit about this idea of capacity for deep joy. But let's do some framing around that, because I think we need, that's fairly abstract. What is the capacity for deep joy? That's such a loose concept. How can we make that more tangible? What can we frame the conversation around?
So you mentioned the topic of acceptance came up, and particularly in the podcast around ISFJs, because introverted sensing, or the memory, as we call it, the nickname we've given is memory. One of its superpowers is acceptance. Now, when that's done poorly, it's accepting things that are unacceptable, right? It's like staying in a situation that's bad or not serving you for too long. And so we're not suggesting accepting literally anything and everything, but introverted sensing or memory has an ability to accept things that can't be changed, right? It's like it's a sensing function. So it's tuned into and focused on the reality. On reality. And it's that old the AA prayer, right? Changing the things that I can and accepting what I can't, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Yeah.
Introverted sensing and extroverted intuition as a polarity, I almost think of as being like mastering those two components is the wisdom to know the difference. What can be changed is an extroverted intuition question, and what can't and needs to be accepted is an introverted sensing piece of wisdom. And so when introverted sensing is not present, then there is almost like a fantasy or denialism around what has to be accepted. So the capacity for deep joy comes in with recognizing, because it makes me think of the old Buddhist phrase, pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional.
Suffering is a choice or something.
Right. It's, pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional, because suffering is the resistance to pain. Like if you accept that that one has to have pain, then it mitigates the suffering. So that back to that capacity. And you were about to say something.
No,
so,
I'm good. I'm
okay.
good. Please continue.
I just want to make sure, because like my brain is.
A couple of links are broken and things, so I'm doing logistics, so my brain keeps going in and out of the conversation. I don't want to mess things up. Please continue talking and don't let me embarrass myself with some random piece of information. Go ahead. Okay.
I just want to make sure that it's okay if
It's
I
all good.
complete this
Please keep running.
All right. So the that concept that pain is inevitable and suffering is optional. The Buddhist concept is that suffering is resistance to pain. So acceptance of pain mitigates it kind of takes the legs out of suffering when we accept that this is a thing that we have to experience. So I think of suffering and joy as almost being like they're antithetical to each other. Joy comes from being able, because joy is different than happiness. Happiness is like usually like there are things that are required in order for a person to feel happy a lot of times. But joy is more of the choice, right? Joy is like, even if a situation is maybe not great, maybe it's not making you happy, but you can still experience joy throughout it. Kind of in that sort of the movie, the older movie, Life is Beautiful, where the father decided to entertain his son through concentration camp experiences and brought joy out in the worst of situations. I'm sure the father was not happy about his situation, but he was still evidencing joy, accepting the situation and then ameliorating it. So this capacity for deep joy is tuned into the capacity to accept pain and to accept that things are not always the way that we wish they were, but that is what they are. And so am I going to be able to navigate through the inevitable pain that I'm experiencing through life and still take the moments of joy that life will afford me, and like the little things, like the whole stop and smell the roses concept? It's like there is beauty all around us, even in the worst of times. There are opportunities to notice the details of life, even if elements of life are no longer like they're not serving you at this time, right? And then also understanding that seasons exist. And when we get stuck as ENP types, Joel and I, when we get stuck in our introverted sensing, the thing that we forget is that this isn't going to be forever. This is a season. But when you're really tuned into introverted sensing or memory, you're very tapped into seasonal thinking, right? You understand that there are cycles to life. And so it's being able to find joy no matter what the situation is, when an ISFJ has really tapped into almost like you could call it radical acceptance. Not accepting anything, but the term radical means like sort of the nucleus of something. What is the purpose of it? What's like its base level foundational component? That's what radical means. And if you have radical acceptance, you understand the point of it. You understand like sort of the nucleus of what acceptance truly is. And I think when ISFJs get to that level of seasoning, of course, they'll had to integrate their extroverted intuition, because the extroverted intuition goes, but not this situation. You don't have to accept this one. You can change this one, right? So they have to integrate that enough to not stay in bad situations, to be able to change when they can and when they should, but to also accept and not thrash against reality, right? Like when it can't be changed. It's that seasoning. It's the quote unquote wisdom to know the difference. And then ending up I've known ISFJs that are older that are at the season point, and it's almost like you can't disrupt their calm. Right. They just have this sense of joy. So that's really what we were talking about, is that concept of what it really means to accept. That's
great. Okay. So for the personality hacker plus members here on this call, now's an opportunity for you. We're gonna open up the small groups. And Karina, could you put 12 minutes on the clock for those small groups? Put 3 or 4 people into breakout rooms here on the Zoom call. We're going to open those up, and here's what I want everyone to focus in on. So again, the Zoom gods are deciding who you're going to be paired with on the membership call. You may not have met somebody, so make sure you introduce yourself to other people like mine's, meet some new friends today, so let them know who you're talking with. And actually, the first person that has the darkest colored shirt should share first. So the darkest colored shirt you're wearing, that'll be just easy to sort to know who to go first. Talk a little bit about the ISFJ influences in your life. Now, again, this isn't a profiling course. You may not be adept at determining other people's personality types. You might have a sense of maybe somebody's type. Maybe they've told you, or you have a sense just because you're tuned into that. But do your best. If you're a little bit new to this and maybe you haven't been to the training, do your best, but tune into the ISFJ influences in your life, people that you believe represent this kind of energy that we've been talking about, these qualitative elements to ISFJ. Capacity for deep joy. Tune into that. Do you see a capacity for deep joy through acceptance in particular? This could be people, by the way, specifically. Sometimes organizations represent these energies for us, right? Sometimes an organization might represent, maybe it's an organization in your town that kind of has an ISFJ spirit to it. This idea of acceptance, but also it creates joy through acceptance. Or there's activities. So it can be people, organizations, activities. I know it's a little abstract. Do your best. This is why I have a conversation around it. But see if you can find ways of that energy expressing deep joy and talk about it. When we come back from those breakout rooms, I'd like to hear from 2 or 3 people in the general session to talk to us, myself, Antonia, and Jonathan, share, and let's get some conversation going around this. Then we'll do our journal prompts and get into today's quest for the week and all of that. And if you're just joining us on the live stream, you don't want to be part of this, personalhacker.com/membership. Love to have you part of it. and part of these discussions each week as we take off and understand things together. Okay, so I think we're ready to open up those rooms. We'll see you back here in 12 minutes to talk a little bit more broadly. We'll see you in 12. All right, so as they're all getting into their rooms, I just want to also mention this is the month of March 2024. If you're still watching on the live streams, we actually are going to be doing some EEG brain imaging sessions. Dr. Dario Nardi taught a class to some of our advanced profiler training students last year. In November, he trained, I think, like 8 or 9 practitioners around EEG brain imaging. At our most recent or our most upcoming personality life path mentorship event in Philadelphia, it's in March. You can go onto our website. I'm going to put the link into the open channel here on the YouTube.
Yeah. All right.
I have it right there if you want to hit enter. If you're still watching, you can follow this link and you can actually set yourself up for a brain imaging appointment with us. We'd love to have you get your brain imaging. We've got a full report. You can come and see what it's all about. It's really interesting. You can also join it comes with a live ticket to the podcast that Saturday night on that weekend. So you can find all the information at that page. It's personalityguide.com/EEG is the place to go. We're getting that started. We're testing things in ENP fashion. We're making it happen and putting application and action to the things we talk about. So you're going to want to check that out. It's brand new and we're just now in the first stages of it. So this will be the first time we do a public event where we're offering this as one of the services. Many of our personality life path mentorship students that are in that advanced program have signed up to have, I think there's like 7 people already on the docket that weekend to get brain imaging done.
Well, and it's really cool.
It's very limited, by the way.
It is limited, but what's really cool about getting a brain scan done is while it can't definitively tell you your personality type, it can give you lots of hints towards it, lots of pieces of information, but what it will tell you definitively is your subtype.
Yeah.
So are you, if you listen to our series on careers where we talked about subtypes, or if you've gotten our owner's manual or your personality type based owner's manual, we talk about the 4 different subtypes of dominant, creative, harmonizing, and normalizing. It took me a moment. But I think people are calling them DCNH at this point, and it's something that Dario Nardi built on the work of Victor Glinko in socionics, his 4 subtypes, and then matched it up to Helen Fisher's concept of the 4 different sort of neurotransmitters and hormones that we have a tendency to build a relationship with.
Yeah.
And not only will an EEG scan tell you what subtype you are now, but it will tell you what subtype you've been in the past, meaning that what have you cycled through, if I'm remembering that correctly, which I'm pretty sure I am. So that's pretty cool, because there's a lot of people who sort of automatically diagnose themselves as like a creative subtype. I think that that's the cool subtype to be. And knowing what subtype you are is really super duper helpful for explaining a bunch of phenomena, what your career has brought out in you, where you might be headed next. What's the next area of development? So highly recommend getting an EEG scan so that you discover what your subtype currently is and where you come from, indicating what your path forward might be. Like, I'm pretty sure I came from normalizing into harmonizing.
Yeah.
That's a really interesting trajectory. And I'm starting to go like, maybe I should be entering more into my creative time period.
Yeah.
And so it gives almost like a map of development within your personality type.
The other thing that Dr. Nardi, I was on the call the other night with some of the students because they're doing some follow-up calls because they're training to be practitioners with Dr. Nardi directly. So we get on Zoom calls. I think Dario's he was in Portugal. Now he's in like Costa Rica. He's like this international man of mystery. He was on the call and he was leading us through this, and he was talking a little bit about the brain imaging, talking about it can almost have a snapshot of what your brain used to look like, how it patterned and looked, how it looks now, and then it can give some future projections on how your brain will shift over time. And there's some recommendations with these imagery scans as well. So we're looking to combine what we already do with personality profiling, which is that psyche to psyche conversational profiling style that we teach in our profiler training 101 course. By the way, if you're interested, you should check that out on our website, Profiler Training. I think it's a fantastic program. We're going to be having our live event in Seattle in May, so that you should check that out if you want to train to be a professional profiler. But we're going to merge some of the profiling along with some of the EEG brain imaging. I think there's some magic that can happen by merging more of the art of the conversation with some of the science of the brain imaging. And I think we already have amazing results for these things separately. Moving them together as a discipline, like a new practice discipline where we're doing conversation, but we're also watching the EEG scans. I mean, Dr. Nardi has a ton of experience in neuroscience and looking at the patterns over time. He's been doing this for a long, long time. He's written books on it.
15 years. I met him the first time 14 years ago when I was doing this.
So we're excited this year. We got a lot of cool stuff coming. I mean, the best place for you to start if you're watching the open stream, just to kind of stay attuned to all of this, know what's coming, is join this membership. It's like the first place to start. It's probably the most accessible program we have for everybody. Probably too accessible. We probably put too much into it. Dumb Joel here just packs value into stuff that he probably should reserve for more advanced programs. I can't help it. We like getting value to many people as we can because we really want to see you make changes in your life. So this is organized around the podcast, kind of beefing up the podcast and learning from that. But you're going to get deep dive sessions. You get an academy. And Tony's going to be starting a premium podcast with a book club associated with it. And then that's a great place to get announcements for all these new activities, events, courses, programs we're releasing. Like, we're doing so much that you need to be a part of. So come over to personalityhacker.com/membership. Be a part of the Personality Hacker Plus membership. Love to see you in this next week when we start. You can actually join right now. If you want to join the membership, we'll get the link and you can join the Zoom call today, or we'll see you next week when you sign up. Either way, Joel Mark Witt, Antonia Dodge for Personality Hacker Plus membership quest call. We will see you